mode mixture or borrowed harmonies. Borrowed harmonies are chords and triads and seventh chords which are built on pitches borrowed from the parallel mode of the key. For example, if we are in the key of D major, pitches which are borrowed from the parallel minor. Borrowed harmonies are harmonies where we borrow the pitches from the parallel mode and use them to construct triads and seventh chords used as chromatic and color and expressive additions to our harmonic palette. So in essence, they're chromatic chords that bring chromaticism into our expression, harmonic expression music, and they are also deriving from that more chromatic contrapuntal motion, more motion using pitches outside the mode, which makes it more interesting to our ears, more exciting, bringing more of the pitch world into our compositions. Modal mixture and borrowed chords have been in in the musical repertoire from at least the Baroque period. They're very common in the Romantic period and Classical period, almost as common as using simply diatonic modes. And when you enter into the full expression of harmony in the mid-19th century, they're a ubiquitous part. They're always part of what we're listening to. Now, they may be built on any scale and any degree. The term borrowed harmonies implies indeed that we are borrowing harmonies from the parallel mode. Now, we've been doing this already. We've been doing this when we've been looking at using the minor mode and using harmony. That is, when we are in minor, to create the important harmonic structures we need for tonality, that is 5-1 or 7-1, 7-1, either one, we have needed a raised leading tone. That raised leading tone is borrowed from the parallel major. For D minor, a C natural is not used. Instead, a C sharp is used, which is borrowed from D major. And that gives us then our dominant chord when that C sharp is used as the third of a major triad, and it also gives us our leading tone chord, diminished or triad or seventh chord, which is then built on the leading tone rather than the subtonic, on C sharp rather than C natural in the key of D minor. So we've been doing this already. In addition, of course, we also have the raised submediant we've been using when we're using the melodic minor, that is, when we're in D minor. And we've added to that the raised seventh. We get that augmented second, and so if we're thinking melodically, we need to raise the sixths also as well. That is, again, in the key of D minor. That means we don't use a B flat, we use a B natural. And we can build harmonic structures from that. Most importantly, a major subdominant, which leads to a major dominant or dominant seventh, which takes us our tonic. So those are structures we've already borrowed. We've already borrowed that using the harmonic minor. In addition, we've also learned the historical relic, the use in history of ending a composition which is in minor on a major chord, the so-called Picardy third, that we are playing along in D minor, and the very last chord ends up as a major chord. And this is a relic from history. This is something that occurred partially because of tuning practices of the Baroque and Renaissance period, that it was very difficult to keep instruments in tune and in a way that was satisfying to our ears, so that we often a composition ended with a major to keep it more in tune. Also because harmony really works functionally only in our major mode. So it's kind of a confession, as it were, that we are really in the major mode with the variant of minor as a variant of major. Now, borrowed harmonies are different in the sense we're essentially going the opposite direction. And we can think of it in terms of borrowed harmonies as we are in the major mode borrowing from the minor mode. For example, we are in D major borrowing from D minor. Now, the three pitches that are different between a major mode and the minor mode are the mediant, the submediate, to the submediate, and lastly, the the subtonic. That's the leading tone, and from the minor, the subtonic. So 3 pitches are different, and we are borrowing those 3 pitches. That is the mediant, the 3rd degree of the scale, the submediate, the 6th degree of the scale, and the subtonic, the 7th degree of the scale. Those 3 pitches. So again, using D minor is our key. That means in D minor we are borrowing, D major, we are borrowing from D minor the pitches F natural, B flat, and C. F, B flat, and C instead of F sharp, B natural, C sharp. So we have those pitches we are using, and we can use them in any to build triads and 7th chords. If we use the pitch borrowed as the root of the harmony, we have a chord right there, and we can use as interesting to our ears. I think all of us can hear that. Moore's half-step motion, more interest to our ears. So we have possible using it as the root, as the 3rd, and lastly as the 5th of triad. Or if we're in the 7th chord, we might actually see it even borrowing it as the 7th of a chord. As the 7th of a 7th chord as well. So, let's look at the possibilities and how we describe them in analysis. The first is using the harmony as the root. And we'll start with the submedian pitch, which is the most common pitch to be borrowed. In our example of D, this means B flat instead of B natural. If we are building then a triad or 7th chord on B flat, B flat, D, we should have F sharp if we're continuing in our diatonic key, but as we now know, an augmented triad is not used in tonal music until the 1880s. So we need to lower that to make a major triad. Now that means that F sharp has been lowered to F natural. F natural is the mediant, is the borrowed mediant of from the parallel minor. So therefore, a chord, a triad built on the borrowed submediate on the 6th degree is also going to include the borrowed mediant, the borrowed 3rd degree of the key, is the key. So in the key of D major, that means we are borrowing both B flat and F and building a triad, a B flat triad in the key of C. If it is the 3rd of a triad, then we have the subdominant of the key and the tonic, and we have a minor subdominant. If it is the 5th, then we have the subdominant and the supertonic, and we have a supertonic triad. If it is the 7th, then it is a leading tone 7th chord, a fully diminished leading tone 7th chord. So those are the possibilities of using B flat as a pitch in the key of D, that is the borrowed submediant in the key in any given key, B flat in the key of D. What structures are built from that? All built from that. Included in that is that we can also make 7th chords. We could have, for example, it is the 3rd. The B flat is the 3rd. The borrowed pitch is the 3rd. We have a submediant. And we can add the 7th to that. If it is the 5th, we can add the 7th to our supertonic and get a half diminished 7th. So we have those possibilities as well. A major triad built on the borrowed submediate, the flatted 6th degree, a minor triad built on the subdominant, and a supertonic chord that is now diminished, not minor. And in addition, a leading tone fully diminished 7th chord. So how are they used? They are predominantly used as then moving into a cadential formula with chromaticism. The B flat adds half-step harmonic motion, which is interesting to our ears. So B flat must resolve as a chromatic pitch. All chromatic pitches resolve in the direction of their accidental. So a flat must resolve down. Since B has become B flat, it must resolve to A. B flat must resolve to A. So how would then a root position, a triad built on the root being our borrowed sub median being? It would resolve to the dominant and then up to our tonic. So borrowed submedian then resolves to our dominant. Same would be true of our subdominant. Our subdominant is a minor triad instead of a major triad. The B flat resolves down to the A, to our dominant, to our tonic instead of. Lastly, our supertonic or our supertonic 7th chord will also resolve, that B flat will resolve down to our dominant harmony, to our tonic. So in each case, the B flat resolves down and we resolve to, typically speaking, a dominant harmony. Same thing in 7th chord. Our submediate 7th resolves to a dominant 7th, to our tonic. Our half diminished supertonic resolves to our dominant, to our tonic. And our leading tone 7th chord resolves to our tonic, as it is already a substitute or a child chord of our dominant. So that is the borrowed submedian. Borrowed medians, that is the 3rd degree. Staying with our key of D major, that means instead of an F sharp, we have an F natural. Here's the root. It forms then diatonically, of course, an F augmented chord. So we also then borrow the subtonic C natural instead of C sharp to make a major triad on the submedian. It can also be the 3rd, which would give us a minor tonic. Very odd, but often seen in passing areas where it is simply a color harmony harmonizing a line. It might do that instead of bringing in the major harmony to identify our tonic. And then also, as we've discussed before, it also forms the 5th of our borrowed submediant chord, our flatted 6th degree chord. So all those are possible, as well as then making, as a 7th chord, a 7th there, a 7th chord, a subdominant 7th chord. Resolutions then, same thing. The borrowed harmony F must resolve down. In this case, again, probably to a dominant, the F resolves to E. Like that. So we have the same resolutions occurring the same way. The F, that is the borrowed submedian, must resolve down. Lastly, we have our supertonic. Supertonic is a little different. It's used mostly when we want to avoid the sound of the leading tone. We want to avoid that clear leading tone, functional tonality sense of resolving. Instead, we use it as a color, as almost a harking back to the modal color. The F C sharp, so the C natural, and it sounds like an rather antique sound, as it were, to our ears, and when it is the root. It is also sometimes seen as the 3rd of a minor dominant. but usually only in passing, as a coloration, as a harmonization of a line rather than functional harmony. So those are the examples: our flatted submediant, our flatted mediant, and our flatted supertonic. Now, in terms of analysis, how do we identify them? We stay with the system of identifying the quality of triad by the type of Roman numeral. If it is a minor triad, it gets a lowercase Roman numeral. If it's a major triad, an uppercase Roman numeral. And if it's diminished, a lowercase Roman numeral with a superscript 0 behind it. That is the general rule for how we identify the borrowed pitches as well. If we are in the key of D major again, and we have a borrowed submediant, and it is the third of a harmony, that means we have a subdominant harmony. Our subdominant harmony traditionally is a major chord, but now will be marked simply as a minor subdominant. That is with a lowercase IV instead of an uppercase IV. That is true also for when it's the fifth of the triad and when it's the seventh of the triad. We simply use the Roman numeral to indicate the quality of a chord and do not change anything about the Roman numeral analysis. However, if it is the root, if the borrowed pitch is the root of the harmony, we must indicate that that root is borrowed. We do that by indicating the chord is built on a borrowed harmony. We do that by including a flat in front of it, a flat in front of the Roman numeral. So, again, staying with D major, our B flat chord, our chord built on the borrowed submediant, would get a Roman numeral 6. Submedians get the Roman numeral 6. You would also get a capital Roman numeral 6 because it is a major triad. However, in front of the Roman numeral, we will see a flat, indicating the root pitch has been borrowed from the parallel mode. The same thing is true of the mediant. We will have a D major, an F major chord, so that it would be first, it is built in the third degree, so it is a Roman numeral 3 on the mediant, and it is also a major triad, so it will be given a capital 3, capital Roman numeral 3, but to indicate that the root is borrowed from the parallel minor, it will have a flat in front of the Roman numeral, flat 3. Same thing with the supertonic, you will have a flat in front of Roman numeral 7, in front of the Roman numeral 7, but also it will be capital because that is a major triad. C, E, G is a major triad in the key of D, but it will have a flat in front of the 7, indicating that the 7th degree of the scale is borrowed from the parallel minor.